Welcome to the Sparkroom webinar series. Sparkroom provides full-service, data-driven marketing and technology solutions to ignite your performance marketing. Our webinars provide actionable advice and insight to help you better strategize, execute, analyze, and optimize your marketing campaign efforts.
Good afternoon. My name's Jeff Berg, and I'm the social media strategist here at Sparkroom, the leading provider of higher education marketing management and strategy. And heck, don't just take our word for it. We're actually the winners of two 2015 Leads Council Leader Awards that showcase the two sides of our business, a gold award for best marketing agency and a silver award for most valuable technology. Sparkroom provides both the fully transparent analytics-based strategies that schools need to achieve their enrollment marketing objectives and an industry-leading marketing software that gives schools a competitive advantage by improving efficiency, quality, and conversion rates. In short, we're pretty awesome. Speaking of awesome things, I want to welcome everyone here to today's webinar, Paid Search Trade Secrets, where we'll be revealing some tips and tricks that our own experts use in their PPC campaigns. Revealing those secrets today is none other than Sparkroom Senior Paid Search Strategist, Ross Bucholc. With a decade of PPC experience, Ross uses his paid search kung fu to help schools create successful paid search programs that are customized to their business goals and makes the world a safer place for the common man. In his spare time, you can find him watching sports, playing sports, managing fantasy sports, and sportily sporting about sports in a very sporting manner. Little known fact about Ross, his favorite Spice Girl is in fact Sporty Spice. Zig-a-zig, ah. Before we get started, let me just bring up a couple of housekeeping notes. First, I'd like to point out some functionality on your webinar control panel. The webinar control panel is located on the top right corner of your screen. If you can't see it, look for an orange box with an arrow in it. If you click on that arrow, the box will expand. If you have any questions during the session, please type your questions into the question box, and our wonderful presenter will answer them at the end of his presentation. Second, I'd just like to assure everyone that following today's presentation, we will be making both a recording of this webinar and a copy of the presentation itself available to all of you who are participating today. Again, thank you for joining us. Now, if you'd like to take a moment and make sure that your seat backs and tray tables are in their full upright position, I'll pass things on over to Ross so we can get this flight underway.
Thank you very much, Mr. Berg. So, as Jeff said, my name is Ross Bucholc. I'm a senior paid search strategist here at Sparkroom. And first, I'd like to just go through some of the topics we're going to be covering on today's webinar. We're going to start off with the Google Ad Preview tool. Then we're going to touch on some ad copy stuff, followed by easy optimizations, quick editor shortcuts, and we're going to sum it all up with the most exciting part, Excel and reporting. So at this point, I'm just going to get right into it with the Google Ad Preview tool. So a bit of an eye chart here, but what you're looking at is the tool, and what it does is pretty self-explanatory. It shows the user previews of ad results as they'd appear on Google. So how does it differ from just being on Google and making a search? Really, it shows you results as if you bought a brand new computer and took it out of the box and just did a search, meaning the results are unaffected by past searches, cookies, IP addresses, etc. So this is my go-to tool for when a boss or a coworker or a client has a question about an ad and why it's showing in a different average position than they're expecting to see it, or why they're seeing a different campus geo than the geo that they're in. I referenced this tool, and you can as well at the link at the very top of this slide. And so what this allows the user to do is to go into the ad preview tool, select the term that they'd like to search on, where they'd like to search on it, from which geographic location, as well as which device they'd like to see the results from. And Google will pull up the results page, again, unaffected by anything like previous searches or cookies. So really the benefit here, and a lot of times where all the questions come from the previously mentioned boss, coworkers, or clients, is why is my ad showing lower than I expect it to? And a lot of times what's happening is the user, client, boss, whatever, is doing tons and tons of searches on terms that they're expecting to see their ad, but they're never clicking. You know, they'd be costing themselves money in doing so. So all they're doing is doing the searches to make sure the ads look right, but because they're not clicking, Google is trying to customize their results page to show them stuff that they will click on so that Google makes money. So they continually see you not clicking on your brand name's ads. They'll start moving them down in the results, And so you'll see your ad showing an average position of 4 on these searches when really the reporting is saying 1 or 2. So again, what this tool does is it eliminates all those previous searches and how Google manipulates your results page to just show you a clean results page as if it's someone who had just bought a new computer, taken it out, gone to Google and did a search. The one drawback of this particular tool, and really the only drawback, is that you can't click through on the ads to a landing page. So it's for viewing purposes only. Unfortunately, you can't click through to the landing page or to look at the destination URL. So again, for viewing pleasures only. After the ad preview tool, I am going to move now into some ad copy tricks. The first of which is longer headlines through the use of punctuation. So what you'll see on this slide, on the right rail ad side, you'll see 2 different ads, one up top that ends with a punctuation with description line 1, and a second where there's no punctuation at the end of description line 1. And as you'll see, the format of the ads is pretty similar. It's pretty much the same. However, if you look to the right, these are examples of top position ads, so the ones that will be showing in positions 1, 2, or 3 above the SEO results. And here you'll see the difference that having a punctuation at the end of description line 1 makes in an ad. So the top position ad, headline, see this question mark. Because there's a question mark at the end of description line 1, what Google's doing is it's actually pulling all of description line 1 up into the headline. Whereas in the ad below it, with no punctuation in description line 1, you'll just see the plain old headline that you see in the examples in the right rail slides. So why would you do this aside from being correct with your punctuations? Well, what we see here is that having the larger, bolder headlines helps drive click-through rate up. And because the uneducated Google user is pretty much just looking at the headline and the display URL of the ad before clicking, when you have this headline that's bigger and bolder, you'll see more of those users clicking through, which could, of course, be extremely beneficial. Another situation where I think it's even more important to use this functionality is when you have a large brand name. So if you can't fit your whole brand name into the 25 characters that you're allotted for a headline, what you can do is extend your headline into the description line 1, making sure that it ends in punctuation, and then that'll draw all of that description line 1 up into that headline area, so it looks like one cohesive brand name as opposed to just squeezing whatever you can into the top 25 characters and then just getting into a description. So that's longer headlines with punctuation. From here, I'm going to stay on the topic of ad copy and actually stay on the topic of longer headlines as well, but a different way of doing so. So here we have a slide on DKI for longer headlines, and DKI stands for Dynamic Keyword Insertion. Now, what is dynamic keyword insertion? Google defines it as an advanced AdWords feature that dynamically updates your ad text to include one of your keywords that matches a customer's search terms. So really what it's doing is by putting these brackets around the word keyword, you're giving Google the liberty to use what they think your headline should be from the keyword that matches back to what the user is searching in the account. So what this can mean is that you'll have these longer headlines potentially if the keyword that Google is matching you to is longer than 25 characters. They do that from time to time. And also, it in the user's case, they're seeing exactly the keyword that they searched on being used either in the headline or the description, wherever you choose to use the DKI. And so they see that and they think, all right, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and you'll see increased click-through rates as a result. So there are a couple things to be careful of here, though, of course, and most importantly, you're going to see that increase in click-through rate as a result, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see an increase in conversion rate as a result. With the additional qualified traffic you get from having a higher click-through rate, along with it will come more of that unqualified traffic as well. So I definitely wouldn't recommend just going out there and rolling out DKI across your whole account to try and drive up click-through rate and get more volume. I definitely recommend testing first, maybe just choosing a campaign or location, seeing how that works out, and then potentially looking at rolling it out further. So again, similar to the last slide here, you're potentially getting longer headlines and you're getting greater visibility, so both of these things resulting in better click-through rates. Now, the case for not using DKI and why I recommend testing before rolling it out. So here's a good example for Target. They're offering new brains and free shipping for over $50, so hopefully the brain you're investing in is over $50 and worth the price for the free shipping. So that's a Target ad. Next one we see on eBay, you can browse their huge selection of wives. So another solid use of DKI. And finally, my favorite example, because it does make it a longer headline as well, human remains at Amazon. They have low prices on these human remains, and if they're over $25, they will ship for free. So what you'll notice here is it's a lot of resellers that tend to leverage the DKI, and even when you're doing searches on some of our schools, you'll see sites like Amazon and eBay popping up there using the DKI as opposed to actually bidding on our terms. So just something to keep in mind. It may work well for them, but stuff like this does happen, and you wouldn't want to hurt the reputation of your school or your client by going crazy with the DKI. And so while it's something that I do recommend testing, it's not something that I'm the biggest fan of. So staying along these lines of ad copy and focusing on the click-through rate and the relevancy of the ads, I just want to pause and take a second to talk about Google Keyword Quality Score and these three main factors that determine it, which are click-through rate, relevancy, and to a lesser extent nowadays landing page quality. It used to be a bigger factor in determining quality score, and now it is to a lesser extent. But anyway, staying on the note of click-through rate and relevancy, we discussed briefly a couple tricks for driving up the click-through rate, which is a huge factor when it comes to the quality score. But now I want to talk a little bit about relevancy, both relevancy of your ad to the user who's doing the search, as well as how relevant Google's bots that are assigning these quality scores find your ads to the keywords that are being searched. So we're going to do so using examples, and here we're going to focus on granularity. So this is a real-life example from a client that asked us to do an audit for them, and what you're looking at isn't the actual breakout of keywords to ad group. What this particular client had was every keyword you see listed on the right around information technology, all built into one information technology ad group. So that means whether someone searched info tech up top or information technology education at the bottom, they were shown the same ad. And now this isn't necessarily wrong, it's just not as right as we'd like it to be, because again, because Google's bots are going through and assigning these quality scores and looking for relevancy when they're doing so, you want your ad to be as keyword rich as possible with the keyword that's being searched. So as opposed to having all these keywords in the same ad group and showing them all the same ad, what we here at Sparkroom do as a best practice is break out our keywords into this one-to-one relationship between keyword and ad group. Sometimes it's a little bit more. We'll throw plurals in there as well, so 2-to-1. Maybe if it's the reverse order of the same keywords, we'll throw those in there as well. But mainly the idea is keeping the keywords as tightly grouped and as granular as possible, which allows us to write ad copy that speaks directly to the keyword being searched. Now, I apologize for the eye chart you're looking at here as well, but in order to squeeze all the lines of copy onto one slide, it had to look like this, unfortunately. But what you'll see again is under that ad group column, the leftmost column, you'll see essentially what is the keyword that's being searched, and then within the headline, some part of the description line, and as well as the display URL, we'll try and squeeze exactly that keyword into those headlines and description lines and display URLs, as opposed to just showing one generic ad for all. So again, just thinking about Google's bots, they go in, they see for the keyword infotech, I'm showing an ad that has infotech in the headline, in the description line, and the display URL, and they're rewarding us for that via a better quality score. Then on the flip side, thinking about it from a user's perspective, and similar to what I mentioned as a benefit for the DKI or dynamic keyword insertion, a user is doing a search on the term infotech, and they see an ad that mentions infotech in the headline, the description line, and the display URL. It looks good to them as well. It's exactly what they're looking for. They click through on it. It drives up your click-through rate, and now we are optimizing to both the two main factors that determine quality score, the click-through rate and the relevancy. And in turn, we're rewarded with this great quality score, which ultimately means cheaper costs per click for that particular keyword. So really what we're doing is the dirty work here and getting granular and writing ads that are pretty much keyword specific as opposed to using dynamic keyword insertion. And the benefit is not having to worry about what we saw on some of those previous slides where you can buy human remains from Amazon or a new wife off of eBay. So unless you're looking for that kind of thing, then you can continue to use DKI as freely as you'd like. Wonderful. So with that, I'll stop raving about how great we are in Sparkroom PPC team, and I will move on to some more ad-related stuff, but not necessarily ad copy. Now we're moving along to ad extensions. I'm going to start with these campaign-level extensions you see listed here that are most popular here at Sparkroom, because not only do these ads help, these extensions help make your ad take up more real estate on the Google search engine's result page, but they also drive the user closer to converting, either on your site or via phone call. So what you see here up top is the call ad extension. The little shot you see on the right is a mobile shot, so that's where the click to call button comes into play. If this were a desktop ad, it would just list your phone number there. And again, you're showing a number in your ad that hopefully leads to more inbound calls. And really the benefit here is taking away the middleman, meaning as opposed to someone submitting a lead and then someone from your call center having to reach out to them and hope they pick up, you're eliminating that factor because the person's ready to be on the phone and speak to someone. They're pressing the button. They're connected with someone instantly. And what we've seen as a result of that is increases in lead to enroll rates, lead to start rates, because you're just more efficient with the whole lead funnel process. So definitely recommend using the call ad extensions. The other one that's used very heavily here at Sparkroom is good old Google site links. And what this does is direct searchers to the most relevant targeted pages on your site, ideally, and gets them the information they want as quickly as possible. So how it's described by Google here is a little different than how we use it here at Sparkroom. We use the site links and they look as they do here, but we're not actually sending these users to a different page. Because we use PPC optimized landing pages here at Sparkroom, no matter what the user clicks, whether it's the headline or any of these site links, ideally we want them getting closest to becoming a lead, so we're driving them to the PPC form no matter what. It's definitely frowned upon in Google's eyes. They prefer that you do send them to different pages, and they claim to monitor this regularly, but I've only seen it happen once where we got dinged for it and had to go in and make some changes. So if you are following the rules, I guess, and sending to different pages on the site, hopefully they're ones that have forms on the page, but if not, I'd at least recommend testing just sending the user to your form page, whether they click the headline or any of the links below, because ultimately you're paying for that click, and so you want them to become a lead. And anytime you're not sending them to a PPC optimized landing page, you're likely hurting your conversion rate. So the main benefit here really is that it takes up a lot of real estate on the search engine result page. So it's moving competition down, or it's moving the competition over to the right rail, which is ideal for optimizing your click-through rate. And the reason I say that's the main benefit is last I heard from Google, I think it's around 3 to 4% of time that a user is exposed to these site links that they're actually clicking on one of the links as opposed to the headline. So they're clicked on pretty minimally. Really, again, the main benefit is just all the space you're taking up with this particular ad. So these are 2 favorite ad extensions, but I don't want to leave out the rest of the extensions that Google offers. So you'll see listed here the other 3 campaign/ad group level extensions that are made available by Google, the location extension, the app extension, and the review extension. So the reason that we here at Sparkroom are less likely to use these than the previously mentioned two is that they all drive the user further away from becoming a conversion and becoming a lead. If you click, I see the locations one used probably most often by schools, and it's great because it shows your address below the ad, and so, you know, maybe if someone's looking specifically for your address, it's great because then they're not clicking on your ad, but in all other instances, you're showing this address link that is clickable, and upon clicking it, you're charged money for that click, but you're driving the user to Google Maps. So you're not driving them to your landing page, and of course, there's no form on the Google Maps page that a user can convert on, so that's one step further away from becoming a lead, and you're paying for the click. So that's the reason we're not a big fan of the location one. Pretty much the same deal for the app and the review. So for the app, you're driven into an app store as opposed to your landing page. And for the review one, you're driven to whatever review site lists the review listed there, as opposed to, again, your landing page where a user can become a conversion. So that's the reason we're not as big a fan of these ad extensions, but as I've mentioned with most of the stuff, you know, you can always test it and see what works best, but ultimately what we found is leveraging the call extensions and the site links have worked out best for our clients. Finally, last thing I'm going to touch on in regards to ad copy stuff is one last extension, and this one's fairly new to Google. It's called the call out extension. And what's great about this particular extension is that it can be created at the account level. So as opposed to having to go into every campaign or every ad group and set up any of the previously mentioned extensions, this can just be set, it can be created and set once at the account level. And as long as it applies to all the campaigns within your account, it's a great tool for making quick updates around any particular offer that you have. Here, in this particular example, you see free shipping as one of the things that they're offering. What I found it most useful for is advertising a start date or an enroll by date, something that you're updating maybe monthly or quarterly, as opposed to having to go through and update every version of your ad copy with that new enroll or start date. Here you can just put it as an extension below. These are not clickable, so it's not something where you're driving the user to a different page. They can't click on it. They can still only click on your headline where you drive them wherever you want. And again, you could get that extra line of messaging across. Love it for enroll by and start by dates because it's quick and easy. And the other benefit is you're not taking away from your ad copy where you should be selling your school, accreditations, you know, online or campus, whatever it may be. You know, those description lines are really, really valuable to be able to sell your school to the searcher, which is why I don't love referencing enroll by or start by dates in my ad copy. And so this is a little bit of a workaround where you can still, when a user is doing a search and you're showing in a top position, advertise an enroll or start by date, but don't have to worry about updating all of your ad copy and getting dinged every month for creating new ad copy that has no history. So love this new call out extension that Google offers as well. All right, on that note, I'm going to end my discussion on ad copy stuff. And I'm going to move on to some easy optimizations. So stuff that should be relatively quick and easy, but will hopefully move the needle for you a little bit. And the first few optimizations I'm going to talk through are going to focus on finding efficiencies. What I mean by that is better conversion rates, but you're probably going to take a little bit of a hit when it comes to volume here. So we're going to be cutting down on volume and ideally cutting down on unqualified traffic. So the first optimization you see listed here is hour of day. What I mean by that is running an hour of day report in Google to see how your ads are performing by hour of day. It's as simple as that. And really the goal here is to make sure you're not exhausting your daily budget in the wee hours of the night and early morning when we tend to see the lowest quality traffic coming through. With an hour of day report, you'll see low volume generally during those hours, midnight to 6, 1 to 6 a.m., but also low conversion rates at those times. So if you're looking to find efficiencies in your conversion rates and your CPLs by getting rid of those wee hours and kind of setting the start of your day back to 6 a.m. as opposed to midnight, what that will allow is, of course, more money to spend throughout the day when your conversion rates are higher, specifically for those campaigns where you have a tight budget that you hit every day. You don't want to be using part of that budget at 1, 2, 3 a.m. when users are unlikely to convert. You'd much rather be live, during the evening hours when conversion rates are higher, and so would absolutely recommend running an hour of day report and looking for which hours generate the lowest conversion rates, and then going in and setting up some day parting in your account to make sure that you are not showing ads during those hours. Next up is pretty similar. It's along the lines of hour of day, except now we're focusing on day of week. So just generally speaking in the PPC world, what I found is that Monday and Tuesday tend to generate the highest conversion rates, whereas the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you'll generally see the lowest conversion rates. So with that in mind, I would absolutely recommend running this day of week report within Google and seeing what exactly your conversion rates look like for those days. But what I'd also stress in doing so is, at the very least, breaking it out by brand versus non-brand. Because when we've done this, for years I did this in only at the summary level, and so I always say Monday, Tuesday, conversion rates are highest, let's spend as much as possible here. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, lowest conversion rates. Maybe we either cut back on budgets or do some bid adjustments during those days to show in lower average positions. But what we found is when you break it out by brand versus non-brand, what we found here, at least, is that the brand was similar to what I said at the summary level, highest Monday, Tuesday, lowest on the weekends. But actually, the non-branded stuff, we saw higher conversion rates on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as opposed to Monday and Tuesday. So the reason it was still skewed at the summary level towards Monday and Tuesday is because we had less non-branded traffic. But anyway, what came of that is we ended up actually being more aggressive with our bids on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for the non-branded stuff, knowing that it converted better, and then keeping everything as is for Monday and Tuesday. So again, try and get a little bit granular, get as granular as you can, but at the very least, make sure you're looking at it as at the brand versus non-brand level to make sure that you're not over-adjusting one way or the other for brand versus non-branded. And then my final quick optimization is around the search partner network on Google. So when you opt into making a brand new search campaign on Google, you're automatically opted into Google.com as well as Google's search partner network. And the search partner network consists of hundreds of non-Google websites, and there are some good ones like AOL, Google Maps, YouTube. I believe LinkedIn is also a Google search partner, so definitely some reputable sites in there. But for all of those reputable sites, you're also bound to be showing on a few that aren't quite as great as those. So it's as easy as unchecking the box that says include search partners. And what you'll find is that volume will decrease, definitely, because now you're showing only to users that are doing searches on Google.com as opposed to Google.com plus all the other websites I mentioned. But with that drop in volume, we tend to see stronger click-through rates and conversion rates as a result of excluding the search partners. So again, staying along the lines of finding efficiencies and maximizing your dollar, excluding search partners is a good and very quick way. I mean, you don't even have to run any reporting. You just uncheck the box way of finding some efficiencies and knowing that you're showing your ads purely to Google.com traffic. So that kind of summarizes the quick optimizations that I listed here that are going to get you less traffic. Now I'm just going to touch on a couple really quickly that will get you additional traffic. So the first one listed here is adding languages. And what I mean by this is not building out actual foreign language keywords and ads, but rather just changing the settings, the campaign language settings, from English but to include other languages as well. So the reason you do this is that you're still showing English ads to users searching in English, but you're just changing this setting to include those searchers who have set a different default language within their Google account. So the most common thing we'll see here is someone's parent is a speaks a foreign language. They're the one that bought the computer and set up the Google account settings, so they switched it to Spanish or French or whatever their native tongue is, but their child was born here in the U.S. and speaks English. If that child is doing a search in English, you won't be showing them an ad unless you're opted into whatever language the parent has selected under the campaign settings. And so what adding these language settings does is just opens you up to a broader audience, again, without doing any work in regards to translations or adding keywords or translating ads. So it's a great way to get a little bit of an incremental lift in traffic, and I definitely recommend testing it. Now, I just mentioned how quick and easy this was. Now, the flip side of this is actually building out a foreign language program. And the screenshots you see listed here are of a search for medical assistant program in English on the left, and then that same search in Spanish on the right. And what I'd like you to notice is the difference in the number of Google ads that are listed for each screenshot. So you'll see on the left it's packed with PPC ads, both up on the top and all the way down the right rail, whereas that same search in Spanish is showing one listing. So because competition is mainly what dictates the CPCs that you're paying, aside from your quality scores, this is a great way to get cheap clicks and cheap leads. Of course, the flip side of that is it's quite a bit of work. I mean, you need to translate all of your keyword sets as well as all of your ads, and be very careful that everything is both grammatically correct and makes sense. A lot of times, if you have a Google contact that you can reach out to, they may help you with the translations. They have some people there internally that will help with these builds. But I'd absolutely recommend testing it if you have a student base that is searching in foreign languages. The one thing you have to be really, really careful of is you either need to offer the classes in that foreign language or need to be crystal clear on your landing page, like bright, bold letters, that the classes are taught in English only. Because while we found that you get cheaper leads as a result of running a program like this, we've also found that those leads tend to convert to enrolls and starts at a lower rate because the user didn't realize that the class wasn't taught in that particular language. So again, absolutely recommend testing it. Believe me, the CPCs are so much cheaper. It makes it so worth the test. But just make sure you're keeping an eye on those leads and how they're enrolling and starting as well before declaring it this great success. And on that note, I think I'm done with quick optimizations. I am. And I'm going to move right along into quick editor shortcuts. And before I start going through these, I don't know how many people are familiar with the Google AdWords editor tool, but that's what I'm going to be discussing here. If you're making all of your changes and optimizations just in the Google UI, you could save tons and tons of time by downloading the Google AdWords editor. So I would absolutely recommend doing so if you don't have it already. It's an application that lets you make all the changes that you make within the UI using Excel bulk sheets. So, we here, the PPC team lives and breathes Excel, and so we prefer to make all of our changes there and then just upload them into the editor tool. And so I'm going to go through just a couple shortcuts here, but just want to throw that out there that first off, if you're not using the AdWords editor tool, similar to the Google Ad Preview tool that I kicked off the call with, I would recommend starting using it ASAP. So the first one I'm going to touch on is pause versus active. And if you're interested in using this particular shortcut, the instructions are laid out right there on the left. It's really super easy. The one thing I'm going to start with here is that whenever you're doing anything in the Google AdWords editor tool, the first thing you should be doing when you open your account is getting recent changes. If there are multiple people touching the account, or maybe you did make a slight change in the UI, but forgot about it, it's not going to show up in the editor tool unless you get your recent changes. So the first thing I do automatically, always, every time when I open my Google AdWords editor, I will get recent changes. So that gives you your most up-to-date campaign structure. Now, getting into this actual shortcut, what it's used for. So, a lot of times we'll see a client's site go down, or something's wrong with the page and they want to cease sending traffic to it. So they'll reach out to us and they'll send us an email with one of those red exclamation points that tells us it's urgent, telling us to shut everything down as soon as possible, because they don't want to be wasting their money sending traffic to a site that is broken and someone can't convert from. So that's great. It's super easy. You select all the campaigns and press pause, and everything's paused. Then the client reaches back out to you and says they're ready to go live again. And you have these hundreds of campaigns. Some were paused previously, some are active. And you need to go through one by one and check off which ones you'd like to reactivate and which ones you want to remain paused. And what the goal of this particular shortcut is to eliminate all of that. And the way you do so is, before pausing all of your campaigns, get your recent changes, go to the Campaigns tab and export your current view. What that export will do is give you a bunch of different campaign setting columns, one of which is campaign status, paused versus active. So what you do is save that file, then you go ahead and pause all your campaigns, so you're no longer sending traffic to the site per the client's request. But then when it comes time to turn everything back on, as opposed to having to go one by one and check and uncheck boxes, you can just upload that same file with that same campaign status column. And once you upload, all of your campaigns will revert back to their previous setting, whether that be paused or active. So eliminating the chance of user error and saving you some time from having to go one by one and activate and deactivate. So love this shortcut. And the next one is kind of similar. It's around copying some of your day parting. So until pretty recently, at least within the last year, you could set up day parting. So say you run your hour of day report and you find that from midnight to 6 a.m. is a lot of unqualified traffic that doesn't convert well. So you set it up to be day parted for one campaign, and then you copy it down to all the rest of your campaigns within the Google UI. Unfortunately, they did some sort of update to the UI within the past somewhere around 6 months to a year that no longer allows you to copy your day parting from one campaign down to all of the rest within the UI. So it was devastating news to us here at Sparkroom and the PPC team. But there is a way to still do this, again, using the editor tool. And you'll follow pretty similar instructions to the previous slide, where you're navigating to the campaign tab. Within the tool, you're exporting the current view. But this time, you're just worrying about keeping the campaign name column and the ad schedule column. So you set up the day parting in the UI for one campaign. You get your recent changes in editor, and then you export that current view with that column. Then all you have to do is copy that column down from the one campaign that you set up to all of the rest. And again, it's as easy as saving your file, uploading it to Google, and now, as opposed to just having one campaign that's day parted from midnight to 6 a.m., very quickly and easily all of your campaigns will be running it during that same time frame. So great stuff, and I use that one very often as well. And finally, to kind of close out the AdWords editor stuff, again, we're kind of dealing with copying here. We're calling this slide cloning just because it sounds better than copying. But what I want to talk about here is when you're setting up a new campaign so this is, I should preface this by saying it's usually best for those clients that have campaigns across different geos or campaigns that have pretty unique settings. So I'm going to use an example of, you have a New Jersey campus and you want to set up a new campaign for the New Jersey campus around competitor terms. A great way to start your build is actually to copy your current New Jersey campaign as easy as Control-C and then paste it Control-V within the editor tool. And what that will do is duplicate that campaign. I'll then rename it what is the new name of the campaign. So what I've done in doing that is I've created the new campaign name, but I copied over all of the settings from the other New Jersey campus campaign. So all of the geo settings, all of the day parting settings, all of the language settings that take all that time and effort to set up. I've already done that. So now I have that shell, and then I just go in and I'll delete all of the ad groups, which in turn deletes all of the keywords and all of the ads as well. So really what I have is this shell account with all my campaign settings copied over, and then I could start building from there with the new ad groups and keywords and ads. So what I've eliminated is having to redo the day parting or redo going in and setting up all my geos. I've eliminated those steps, and then I could just get started on worrying about the keywords and the ads. So definitely love that one as well. So finally, moving along to the most exciting part of the presentation, Excel and reporting, everyone's favorites. I'm going to go through some of my most used Excel formulas, and these are actually the ones that are listed in that little insert function box that come up when you go to do a formula. These are my top 4. They start with the VLOOKUP. Now, the VLOOKUP has to be the hardest possible formula to explain. At its core, what it does is it looks at a value in one column and pulls the value in that column next to it into your document. Yeah, I know. It's not very easy to understand when it's put that way, nor is it easy to explain. So, you know, if that explanation didn't make sense or the definition next to VLOOKUP doesn't make sense to you, I'd certainly recommend Googling it if you're not using VLOOKUPs currently. But when it's best used is when you have a huge, using the EDU specific stuff, you have a huge file of leads. They're PPC leads, they're PPL, they're direct type in, SEO, whatever. And then you have a separate file with just PPC leads. And what you want to do is get the email addresses over from your massive file just to the PPC file. You could use a VLOOKUP to easily do so. And the way that you'll do that with this function can be found by Googling it and checking it out. I definitely recommend it, but I'm going to cease trying to explain it because this is the 3rd or 4th time I've tried to do so with absolutely 0 success. But it is my most used, so again, I definitely recommend checking it out. The next 3 are a little bit easier to explain. I'm going to roll right into concatenation, which is combining or joining text from 2+ columns. So the most common use for this for me is when I'm building destination URLs that include lots of parameters at the end of them, as opposed to going one by one, row by row, and building those URLs. What I'll do is build out each parameter in a separate column, and then I'll use the concatenation tool to bring all of those columns together into the destination URL living in that one column. So great tool for bringing everything together. The other great use for concatenation is actually when you're building out you're taking a Google bulk sheet where you have ads that have a description line 1 and a description line 2, and trying to transfer that into making it a Bing upload. For Bing bulk sheets, there is no description line 1 and description line 2, it's just a text line. So what you have to do is to transfer it from Google to Bing is take your description line 1 and description line 2 from Google and concatenate them into one description line. So another great use for that particular formula. Next one, length, is invaluable to writers of PPC ad copy. If you're worried about staying within the character counts, of course, we have 25 character headlines and 35 character description lines. Simply put, the formula tells you how many characters are in the cell you've selected. So as opposed to having to actually count characters while you're writing ad copy, I hope no one does that. Please use the length tool. It'll tell you very quickly and easily whether or not you're within the proper required character counts, and it's much easier than sitting there and counting characters. And then finally, the last one is probably used a little bit less than all of the rest. It's the proper formula. So what it does is it makes the first character of each word uppercase and the rest is lowercase. We use this when we're writing ad copy, or we get ad copy from a client, and it's in usually all lowercase, or what's grammatically correct. What we found here through testing is the same ad in this proper format, as opposed to the first word being capitalized and everything else lowercase, tends to drive a higher click-through rate, and so that's why we prefer to have the first letter of every word capitalized. And again, just like most of the other things I've mentioned, I'd recommend testing it before just taking my word for it. But the proper tool, the proper formula, allows you to make this transformation of an ad from lowercase to having the first letter capitalized in every word pretty quickly and easily. So love that formula as well. And that kind of closes out the discussion on Excel formulas. Next up is reports you can use. So this particular slide, I didn't want to give you a screenshot of Excel, but I just wanted to mention, I just felt like it was worth mentioning here at least the way we go about running our reporting here at Sparkroom for the PPC team. So what we prefer to do is run by day keyword level reporting when we're building out a client's reporting template. And what this allows us to do is have really the most granular view of data that we can get. And what we'll do is we'll build it into a data tab, essentially, where we're stacking this data on a weekly, monthly basis, and then using pivot tables to go ahead and build out the views that the client likes to see in their weekly and monthly reporting. That being said, when the client reaches out with any sort of ad hoc request, we also have all this data readily available to use, and we don't have to go into the UIs and run the reports again. We could just pop open our template and manipulate the data and the pivot tables however we feel fit without having to run additional reporting. So always prefer to have more data than less, and by running a daily keyword level report, that gives us all that data readily available. Like I said, all we have to go in and do is make it pretty for the client. So speaking of making it pretty for the client and or boss, well, the picture you'll see here is something that's still in development here at Sparkroom, and that is the paid search dashboard. It's a fancy little dashboard with graphs and colors and all sorts of good stuff that make your reports look pretty, as opposed to the usual Excel data dumps that we tend to use here internally to optimize. This gives you more of a visual of how you're doing, and as you can see here, it's breaking out click volume, lead volume, how many of your leads are bad, your CPCs, and then some other views there. And like I said, this is still in development. I believe it's going to be released somewhat soon. I don't want to make any promises. But I know it's on the horizon, and it'll be completely interactive and clickable for our clients. So looking forward to getting this and kind of just being able to quickly and easily doll up our reporting a little bit so that we're not just constantly looking through numbers and data in Excel. So that's kind of a little bit of more to come around that, but keep your eyes open for any updates around the fancy new dashboard releases. And finally, I'm going to close out this particular section and really the presentation on a couple other things that we provide to our clients aside from the performance reporting when we're meeting with them on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis. And that's competitive reporting. So super important not only to be keeping an eye on what you're doing, but also on what your competition is doing. And so we leverage a tool called the Search Monitor to essentially monitor our clients' brand terms. So everything that's going on there. So this particular report that you're looking at shows the percentage of coverage by both you and all of your competition on your brand name over whatever period of time you specify. So for this particular client, SA Edge, you'll see up top they have 100% coverage across the board, and then you'll see all their competition for this month and the coverage percentages that they have on their terms. Now, keep in mind it's perfectly legal for competitors to bid on each other's terms, so there's not necessarily anything you can do with this data that's actionable. But when you're looking at your reporting or your performance and wondering why your brand CPCs are on the rise, why your brand click-through rate is decreasing or your conversion rate's decreasing, this tool is super, super valuable, especially when you put some trending into it and say, all right, week over week we see this competitor increasing coverage or decreasing coverage. It's super valuable for having an explanation for why brand movement is what it is. And then, ultimately, if you see a competitor there that's being super, super aggressive, which is perfectly legal, a lot of times I'll just mention to my clients, you always have the option to bid on their terms as well. It will open up Pandora's box in some instances, but, you can get some qualified traffic from there as a result of doing so. So just something to keep in mind, but love this tool, super helpful. We provide this particular report to, at least I provide this report to all of my clients along with my performance reporting, and then I also include this report. So this is trademark monitoring, and I know it's going to probably look a little bit small, but this is the same type of deal where we're using the search monitor to, again, monitor your trademark terms. But in this case, we're looking at uses of your trademark in ad copy and whether or not competitors are doing so. And that is not allowed by the channels. And so this is something where you can actually, when you see instances of someone using your trademark in their ad copy, you could go to Google or Bing and file a trademark complaints form and actually get that advertiser removed from showing at least that ad on your terms. So whereas the other one's helpful in kind of looking at trending and CPCs and click-through rates, this is more so helpful in just actually protecting your brand and your trademark and making sure someone isn't impersonating you on the search engines. So love providing these two competitive reports along with all of our performance reporting and being able to review all of that on our calls. And with that, I think I'm done. I have questions. So at this point, do I turn it over to you, Berg?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
All right. Thanks, Ross.
My pleasure.
It's time for us to take some questions. I realize that we are approaching 3 p.m. rapidly, or 3 p.m. here on the East Coast, beautiful downtown Paramus. We're going to go a little bit over on this if you'd like to stay with us. Otherwise, these questions and answers will be part of the recording that we release. And if you ask a question and drop off, if you've asked a question and you drop off before we answer your question, we'll also answer your questions over email. As Ross mentioned, it's time for us to take questions. If you have any questions, let me just remind you, please type them into the question box on your webinar control panel. And if you cannot see the control panel, look for the orange box with the arrow on the upper right-hand side of your screen. Click on that box, the control panel will expand, then you can type your questions in there on the questions panel.
And easy questions only.
Right.
No questions that are going to stump me and make you sound stupid, right?
Right, exactly. Precisely. So the first question is, what percent of overall marketing budget should be allocated to PPC? I mean, I feel like as social media strategists, I'm qualified to say that 100% should go to social media and 0% should go to PPC, but how do you feel about that, Ross?
Yeah, so that's a question we get asked very often, and I'd probably say the same thing, 100% PPC, because I'm pretty partial to PPC. But really, I mean, ultimately what you need to be looking at is your cost per start and what's driving the most efficient cost per starts. I don't want to just throw a number out there without having looked at how your other stuff is performing. I can say what we've seen recently, at least over the past year and a half, 2 years, is a lot of clients shifting PPL or pay-per-lead budgets over to PPC because they're finding it to be more efficient, not only because those leads tend to be a little bit more qualified, but also though you tend to get less of them, it kind of takes it easy on the call center a little bit as well, so it's more so quality over quantity. So I hate to be so generic and gray with my answer, but ultimately whatever gives you the most starts at the most efficient cost per start, I'd recommend. Generally, we found that to be PPC, but I don't want to discount PPL too much because, you know, there are sources that do work well in that space, and, you know, you have to worry about the whole balance of your marketing mix. But, you know, I don't know. Do you want me to do I have to throw a number at a dartboard or no? Good. All right. I don't want to do so, but PPC is great, so spend there.
All right. What is a good PPC conversion rate?
So we're talking EDU industry?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it depends on the programs that you offer and where you're sending that traffic. So I'd say, and again, this is going to be pretty generic, generally we see lead conversion rates in the 5 to 10% range if we're talking about just the click to lead conversion rate. And then if we're looking at some of the further down the funnel stuff, so for example, if you want to look at how a PPC lead converts from a lead to a start, we generally see that somewhere in the 10 to 15% range. And that really is the core reason why people are shifting from PPC to PPL, because last I heard, I believe, the general lead to start rate for PPL is somewhere around 1 to 3%. So, you know, the PPC leads tend to be more qualified and become starts more often. But just for a lead conversion rate, somewhere in the range of 5 to 10%, and that's assuming you're sending your traffic to a PPC optimized landing page as opposed to a fully built out website with navigation, and assuming you have normal programs that are just pretty standard and generic in the EDU space.
So the reports you were talking about in the towards the end of the presentation, are those things available through the Sparkroom software, or are they only available for those for whom we manage the PPC campaigns?
So it depends. If we're talking the dashboard, that's going to be, I believe, Sparkroom only clients, because the dashboards are live via Sparkroom.
Sparkroom software clients.
Correct.
Any Sparkroom software.
Correct. Whereas, I mean, just running keyword level by day reports, I'm assuming that's not what they were talking about, because that's just ran in the channels, Google and Bing. So, so yeah, the dashboards would be Sparkroom clients.
All right. When you're talking about DKI, what happens when the keyword searches are going to be longer than the 25-character headline?
Right. So it depends, and that's where it gets a little wishy-washy. You know, you're kind of giving Google the liberty to show what they want for the most part, which is a little bit scary, because ultimately we need to remember Google's in the business of making money, so it's to their advantage for someone to click through on the ad, because that's the only way they make $1 on it. So if it's over 25 characters, sometimes, like in my example, and I'm just going to scroll back through here, in the Amazon example, where the human remains at Amazon, that's way more than 25 characters, so Google chose here to pull that up into the top, and sometimes they don't. But so, you know, honestly, I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason to when they choose to and when not to. But the one thing you'll notice about DKI on my first DKI slide is the way it's set up. So you put in brackets keyword, and then you close the bracket. After the colon, you can put what you'd like Google to show if they're not going to choose to show what the user's searching. So say they search, where can I find a great online college, which is just, there's no way Google's going to make that as the headline. You could tell them, all right, just show online college, and that's how we'll get around that. But as far as when they show the long ones and when they don't, honestly don't know.
When you were talking about the quick optimization sections, and specifically the day of week reports, you mentioned that there were discrepancies between branded and non-branded conversions on specific days of the week.
Correct.
Do you have any theories as to why those exist?
That is a wonderful question. Yeah, so if you're not familiar with the EDU lead cycle, one of my favorite Google statistics is that it takes over 50% of searchers take between 30 and 60 days to mature into a lead, meaning they're starting on day one doing a search for just criminal justice college. They're in the discovery mode. They don't know what schools offer it, what schools they're interested in. They know nothing. From that point, they're finding which schools offer the programs they want and they're interested in. They're doing their research around each of those schools, usually coming back on some brand terms, and then 30 to 60 days later converting. So for that reason, I think it's important that we look at the non-branded and brand stuff differently because, so to get to the core, what happens is someone does a search on non-branded on the weekend when they're doing their research, but ultimately, when they're coming back on brand, they don't want to waste their valuable weekend time filling out forms is the main point. So that's why Mondays and Tuesdays tend to convert at the highest rate because people are back at work where they don't want to be working and they're willing to spend that time filling out a form and submitting it. So that's the theory around that. People are doing their research on the non-branded stuff on weekends and then becoming conversions on Monday and Tuesday.
All right, and then since we're a little pressed for time, we'll have one more question. Anybody who is listening right now that still has a question, feel free to submit it, and we will definitely get back to you via email. But the last question is, in terms of an enrollment funnel, where does PPC fit? I mean, is that top of the funnel? Is it mid funnel? How does it fit?
It's another tough one. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was just mentioning in regards to someone starting with a non-branded search, and then from there, it really depends on what you're doing with your marketing. So say you're not doing anything besides PPC, it starts with that non-branded search, and then you're hoping they come back on a brand search and ultimately convert. Whereas, if you're doing some social stuff and some Google remarketing stuff where, that day one where they do that search and they hit your site, then you're continually hitting them with display ads via remarketing and messages via social. It could change the search funnel. So I'm obviously going to be partial to PPC because it's what I do. I think it's probably at the top of the funnel, but we could feel free to debate about that all day. I'm sure you feel differently, yeah, I'd say it's probably at the top of the funnel because generally people are starting their search there, and then the rest of the marketing mix comes into play from there in making sure that you're maturing that relationship until they ultimately become a lead.
All right, great. So that's about all the time we have. We're about 7 minutes over what we said. So everybody who's stuck on and stuck with us through this, thanks for bearing with us. If you have any additional questions or need any additional information, please feel free to contact Ross using the contact information that is no longer on your screen.
It'll be listed there in a second.
But was on your screen at one point in time. For more information on Sparkroom's products and services themselves, you can always go to www.sparkroom.com. And if you missed any of those URLs, or you'd like to have another look at the presentation, we will be sending you an email within the next couple of days, which contains a link to this deck. We'll also be posting this information on our blog, which is located at the very original and inventive www.sparkroom.com/blog. Thanks again for joining us, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you for your time. For more performance marketing resources, including our series of on-demand webinars, go to sparkroom.com/resources.